We once again return to our bootlegging colony at Silverhorn Mountain with the Silverhorn Brewing Company for more misadventures in alcohol. Today's episode, we are going to have lots and lots of alcohol to make lots and lots of silver and new friends and just have a good old time. And speaking of alcohol, let me ask you, how many of you dirty SOBs are ready to party? Let's get started, folks. We begin this episode with some bad news though. Saburo actually has the plague, unfortunately, but that's alright as we do have plenty of medicine. We're going to go ahead and get started on tending him. And the only issue that really comes to mind when thinking of tending Saburo is we don't have any good doctors except for him, so he has to do a self-tend, and it doesn't look like the herbal medicine is going to cut it. Unfortunately, we ended up having to dip into our Glitter World medicine just a little bit to ensure that he wouldn't die. Now, we didn't have a lot of it, but that was okay. This is basically what it's there for. We can always buy more or earn some back or something like that. And it did prove to be very useful as he developed an immunity just shortly after that. Not long after that happened, though, we ended up having a U.S. Marshal who was coming to try and shut down our operation. Unfortunately for him, of course, we couldn't allow that. Actually, now that I think about it, this marshal might be a lady. Oh, what's that? You didn't think a lady could be a marshal? I knew you didn't think that, you misogynist. Anyway, we're gonna kill this person. It doesn't matter. Unfortunately for the marshal, after being shot down to the ground and laying in the mud and being stripped of their clothing, Bacchus came in and cut their throat and left them there to die. But lucky enough for us, though, after killing the U.S. Marshal, we came home and built a vodka distillery so that we could make some wonderful vodka to sell to our settler comrades. We made some vodka mash out of potatoes and then filled up the drum. After that, we had an exotic goods trader coming from nearby, and we decided to buy some Glitter World medicine off of them to kind of help restock from the little bit that Saburo used. But naturally, things are never just hunky-dory all the time. We ended up having a raid. It was actually two angry settlers who were coming, I suppose, to try and kill us and take over our bootlegging operation. Now, the two of them had a hunting rifle and a shotgun, meaning not only were they dangerous up close and personal, but they were also very dangerous from a good distance away. Thankfully, of course, though, we would have a home field advantage, and we also outnumbered them, 3 of us to 2 of them, and 2 of our people were dual-wielding pistols, so we kind of outgunned them as well. To our surprise, though, the person that was the most dangerous was the one with the double-barrel shotgun. Somehow this shotgun had some pretty good range to it, and they ended up doing quite a number on Bacchus. We ended up doing a strategic retreat back towards the base, and naturally, of course, we ended up defeating the 2 of them very easily after they came after us. And then late one evening, we had 2 refugees calling for assistance from nearby. They had been ambushed in a caravan, and they just needed to rest and regroup for a few days. So we did allow them to stay here for a short period of time. However, there was a condition. Out of fear of a betrayal, once they entered the camp, we did request that they disarm any weapons they had on them. And kindly enough of them, they were very quick to comply with this request, which I guess really they had no other choice as they were the ones begging for help, but still was very nice of them. A little while later, we ended up seeing that Saburo had actually proposed to Bacchus, so now they are engaged to be married, which is absolutely wonderful. I just kind of thought I'd throw that in here. The young refugee child was getting into a little bit of mischief around the moonshining camp, and by that I mean he was actually being hunted by wild animals, but don't worry, we'll save him. And then one dark evening, it had finally been time. That's right, we finally took care of the cassowary long enough for it to go home. So we threw it over our shoulder and began packing it off to its friends. And they were very kind enough, of course, to hold up their end of the bargain. They ended up giving us a new moonshiner named Shortus. While he's not a moonshiner / bootlegger just yet, we're going to have to teach him the ropes and that kind of thing, but he'll do. We'll make do with him. Just before the refugees decided to depart, I ended up seeing the young refugee child drawing some chalk on the ground next to our camp. I don't know, it just makes me reminisce of young Larry Sapling from the logging empire, and when Tree was a baby, it makes me want babies in this colony. Who knows though, maybe someday, we'll see how things go. Now right now we have a combat supplier who has plenty of dynamite for us to purchase, and lucky enough they were willing to exchange a few sticks of dynamite for some of our high quality Silverhorn Brewing Company beer. Realistically, we could use this dynamite for mining inside of our mountain, but I would rather use it for weapons. It's actually extremely dangerous. We ended up mining out a good sized section, I would say, of the mountain to add onto our warehouse. That way we could add a lot of production benches like a smithy, taxidermy table, and things like that. In the meantime, while our high quality alcohol was fermenting, we were mining some steel nearby. And since so far throughout the series I've decided I'm not going to let them drink any alcohol until we have a much larger stockpile. I don't want them drinking up our entire inventory. I've decided to grow tobacco and make cigarettes and cigars and things like that for them to smoke instead. Because just as the old saying goes, if you can't tear apart your liver with liquor, you might as well cook your lungs from the inside out with cigarettes. Or something like that. After some time, we finally had our very first yield of vodka. We had 25 vodka from that, but we wouldn't stop there. We decided to build a gin still so we could begin making some gin naturally. In my opinion, the gin was a little bit easier than beer to make. All you needed was wild berries. You didn't even have to grow any hops or anything naturally. The only issue was it took a little bit longer to do, and it was a bit more sensitive to temperature. We ended up having another group of hostile settlers coming to try and destroy us and take over our bootlegging operation. But this time, however, we had a different approach to things. Instead of just going out and shooting the shit out of them, we decided to build a cannon. That way we could use it and then shoot the shit out of them later. Because nothing says dead like a cannonball hitting you square in the face. And though that may be true, that unfortunately wouldn't be what happened here because apparently Bacchus is dog shit aim with a cannon. But I suppose you guys know the deal by this point. Naturally, the settlers stood no chance against us and we quickly gunned them down. We had outnumbered them, of course, and we killed most of them except for one we ended up taking prisoner. His name was Blitz. Now when Blitz came here, he wanted to kill us and take over our bootlegging operation. Well, he's kind of going to get a little bit of that. He's going to be part of the bootlegging operation after we stuff him in this little hole and brainwash him into joining us. But don't worry, we're not slavers. We're not going to enslave him. We're just going to recruit him, and we're going to make some beautiful tiles in his little cave, so it's not too bad. Now Tree had a wonderful idea to celebrate all the victories in the last few months. We would throw a drum party right in the center of camp, and everybody was having a good old time. They were shaking their little cowboy and cowgirl asses and having a big yee-haw and hell yeah and whatever else western-y time people would say, and it was fun. They had fun. They had so much fun, in fact, that the drum party was unforgettable. Now that is what I call a good party. Actually, what I call a good party is one where I don't have to socialize. There's plenty of different types of cheeses for me to eat, and they have some Dr. Pepper on ice. But, you know, that's just personal preference. Sometime later, though, Bacchus was struck with a stroke of genius, some creativity of sorts. She decided to take some wood, and she knew how to do this, I suppose, from her days in the logging empire, and she made a beautiful instrument. Shortus took it, and then he moseyed on up to the fire and played himself a little cowboy song. Jesus, that was bad. The things I do to entertain you people. Anyhow, though, one night we ended up having a nice young lad named Reek offer to just join us, said he had nowhere else to go, and he would make moonshine for us and different liquors. You know how it goes, so we accepted. Something I do want to mention with Reek, he actually has a psychite dependency. Now, I didn't notice that when playing, and I came back to edit this, and now I noticed, so we'll get it taken care of, but for this, I didn't notice at all. Reek would also be the luckiest winner in the entire bootlegging camp. He would be the one that I would let carry the dynamite, that way in case we blew up, it would be him. Something interesting did also end up happening. There was a bit of an affair. Now, some of you may not know this, but Tree is actually married to a woman, and we haven't seen her wife in this series just yet because when Prohibition was enacted, Bacchus and Tree had to escape prosecution because they were bar owners. So she and Tree have been separated from each other for quite a while, and it looks like Tree is interested in finding love with Shortus instead of her wife, which is also very interesting because that does mean that there is now the opportunity for children. But the children would have to wait, as we currently have a large group of Thromboian tribe members coming to try and murder us. One of them came from the east, and we quickly beat the shit out of them. The others came from the southwest and began cutting through our defenses like butter. Unfortunately for the Thromboian tribespeople, though, we would give them a good spoonful of hefty ass whipping. And then after defeating the onslaught of tribespeople, we decided to load up all of our alcohol to take to a local settlement to trade. Unfortunately, we couldn't actually carry all of the alcohol, though. We were finally getting to the point that we were making so much product that we would start needing animals to help us pack it all to the local settlements. Now, after trading with the local settlement, we returned home with just over about 1,200 silver, and we also returned home with about 40 or so gold. Now, the silver, of course, is just the currency on the world, but the gold we purposely requested from them. Now, the reason that we had purposely requested this gold from the local settlement is so that we could use it in our brand new Am Brandy distillery. Now, this is a distillery that actually uses ambrosia. Now, with all these new products that we have been discussing, and as I mentioned earlier, we're going to need some pack animals, so we began trying to tame some muffalo. It took a little while, but we eventually ended up taming one. And you know, realistically, one muffalo for right now would be perfect, I think. Later on, of course, once the empire gets bigger and we have more and more product, of course, we can tame more and breed them, so on and so forth, inbred muffalo babies. Late one evening, Bacchus decided to go out and harvest some of the ambrosia that had sprouted near our camp. This ambrosia, of course, would be used to make alcohol. Now, the interesting part with this alcohol is when we make the ambrosia mash, it actually has to sit for a while and ferment, and then once that is fermented, you take it to the distillery to have it distilled. We also ended up recruiting Blitz after a very long time, and I was going to get a good shot of him, but he apparently went straight to a tent and hid away from me where I couldn't see him anymore. That dirty piece of... Moving on, though, I just want to mention that I'm extremely happy with how the bootlegging colony, essentially the camp, is coming along. And I want to mention that, you know, right now we are a camp, and I love the way the camp looks. I like how I put down I'm complimenting my homework, essentially, but I really enjoy how I put down the wooden planks and whatnot, like the flooring. It looks really good out there with the dirt, kind of something. It kind of reminds me of like towns in Red Dead Redemption. If you've ever played that game, there's some towns where they have like a lot of wood on the ground for the roads, and it's kind of what this reminds me of, and that's kind of where I found the inspiration to do that, I guess. I think it looks really cool. The tents look good. At some point, we are going to try and start becoming a town instead of a camp, if that makes sense. So we're actually going to have houses and things like that, and, you know, hopefully we can kind of turn this into like a bootlegging settlement or town, or, you know, like an alcohol empire, just as the name entails. And whoops, sorry about that. You probably heard me accidentally touch my microphone like that. I apologize. I didn't mean to do that. But this is going to be the end of the episode, guys. I just want to thank you guys ever so much for watching. And before I forget, I do also want to give a shout out to our wonderful viewer who goes by the name of Rice. To the best of my knowledge, Rice was the first one to actually mention an Alcohol Empire series. And I should have gave you credit in the first episode. I am very sorry about that. You deserve all the credit in the world for this. I know many people have mentioned this as well, and thank you everyone for mentioning this. I just believe that Rice may have been the first one. And we also discussed on Discord, I should say, a little bit more in-depth ideas for this series and stuff like that. So shout out to you, man. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all of you for your ideas, your suggestions, your comments, your feedback. I do read all of your comments. Now that we've gotten a little bit bigger, I haven't replied to every single person like I used to, you know. When we had like a little under 2,000 subscribers, I would try to comment back to every single person, but right now, you know, we're getting a lot of comments, and you guys, most of you are just thanking me and, you know, for making episodes or saying that's cool and stuff like that, which is absolutely wonderful, and I could not be more grateful for that. Just want to let you know. So if you don't see that I commented back on your comment, obviously just know that I love you and I really appreciate that. And if you give me some insults, I also appreciate that. It's great, and it's great for my my massive ego. Just kidding. But thank you guys ever so much for watching. I love you guys, and I appreciate your support on the channel, on the series, yada yada. You know, all awesome stuff that I thank you guys for all the time. But I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.